Lee, hello. Um, just to reassure you, Lee, that the lateness is entirely on my end.
That's fine. I was worrying that for whatever reason it wasn't working.
Nothing to do with you, just me at this end, being, I don't know, a Luddite of some kind. Hello, welcome. It's really lovely to have you with us.
Thank you very much. I'm glad we're up and running. So how are you?
All good, all good. It's a lovely sunny day down in Wiltshire. What about where you are?
It's beautiful. I'm actually sat in a room which is west facing,
Yeah.
so I've got the sun streaming in through the blinds. So it's absolutely lovely.
Oh, couldn't ask for more, could you?
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about a slightly less sunny topic in many ways. We're here to talk about Ofsted and how to stay well during an inspection. I should say, not just Ofsted, but all of the inspectorates that we have in the four nations. Um, Lee, could you start by introducing yourself and just saying a little bit about your experience with inspections to date?
Okay. So I'm Lee Walker. I'm an executive head in schools in East London. I've been in headship for 10 years, and in that 10 years I've had 3 inspections, 2 of which were in the new framework and 1 which was in the old framework. So the biggest difference between those were mainly the 90-minute phone call, which I first experienced back in 2019. Just before COVID hit, actually. So that was the first time I experienced that, and then I experienced it again, actually just before the Easter holidays.
Mm.
So,
So it's fresh in your mind?
very fresh in my mind.
Yeah,
Very glad it's over.
yeah,
But very, very fresh in my mind.
yes. And it's fair to say then you're well experienced at this. You really know what you're talking about.
Yes, I
You've been
do. I
through
think
it.
it's quite weird actually because you have that whole anticipation of the call to come in. You do all the preparations for the call, and even though I've done it a number of times as a deputy and as a head, um, there is still that element of it feels like it's your first time.
Right.
And I think part of that is because you don't necessarily know and you won't know who your team is going to be, and you won't know what the dynamics of that is going to be like
Mm.
until your team has actually come through the door and you've had that very first interaction with them. So yeah, it does feel quite weird, even
Mm.
though I've been through the process. The most recent one still felt like it was the very first time that
Oh,
I was going through that process.
so it's interesting because some of my questions are around, facing an inspection as an experienced leader versus as an early career, maybe classroom teacher. But it
Yeah.
sounds as though no matter how many times you do it, you still get that first time jitters.
You do get that first time jitters. I think what was quite weird was that I in the school in the school where the inspection took
Mm.
place, I joined the school back in October 2022, and was only ever meant to be here for a short period of time,
Mm.
covering absence. But even when I arrived in the October, we knew at that point that the inspection was due, that
Mm.
it should have come ideally in March 23, which would have been the 5-year window at that point. But it didn't.
Mm.
So you had all of that rushing around, for me trying to get my head around um, all that had taken place in the school
Mm.
prior to
Mm.
my arrival. I was only here for part of the week, so you're trying to get all of that information gathered very, very
Mm.
quickly and get a real sense of where the school was at that point
Yeah.
on its journey. Knowing in the back of your head, Monday to Wednesday, you could get the phone call and not quite feeling ready for that phone call to come through, because it was a very different feeling where with the school where my substantive post was at, there was time to prepare before the call came through. Actually, on both occasions. So you have the narrative. I knew when I took up post 10 years ago at my other school, there was at least a couple of years before the next inspection was due. So you work with those timeframes in your head when you come into somewhere and you know that actually that call is imminent. That changes. That changed for me how I approached and dealt with that situation.
Yes, of course.
So
Oh.
yeah, it was more just a case of, Monday to Wednesday you work on the fact, the call could come. I got past Wednesday and I thought, okay, we can now work on the next bit of things before getting to the next stage of starting that whole cycle again. Yes. That Monday morning.
Oh, wow. Okay. I mean, that just sounds, I've got butterflies just hearing it, to be honest. But that's really helpful to hear. I wonder if you could tell us then, thinking about everyone in the school, leaders and, classroom teachers, the TAs, the LSAs, everyone, having been through all these inspections, what have been some of the effects on wellbeing that you've seen firsthand? And I'm interested in hearing some of the good as well as the bad.
I think the good, if we focus on the good, I think it gives people an opportunity to shine. I often talk to people about setting up your market stall and thinking about how you present that to your customer, and of course the customers being the children. And almost saying to people, well, actually, though we may be having people coming in to visit, in some ways it's no different to the local authority coming in to visit and sort of looking to see what practice looks like at the school, or parents being in for a visit and looking around. And parents can be quite critical, probably more so than Ofsted can be sometimes over things. But I think with preparing staff, it's that narrative around, this is a real opportunity for you to shine. If you're a subject leader, it's a real opportunity for you to demonstrate your knowledge and understanding, your passion for what you do every day, and actually reminding staff that Ofsted are the visitors. We know our school, we know our context, and it's really important to remember that we are inviting them into our context. So, it's important that we control that narrative with them. And I think, staff, took that on board. And also the transparency around the conversation, in terms of, these are the things that we might expect. What does practice look like at the moment? Let's celebrate that. That's a positive. What's the next bit that we've got to work on? I think the thing that I think becomes potentially the bad is how staff, particularly subject leaders, and I wouldn't even say inexperienced staff, because I saw it happen to an experienced staff member at my most recent inspection, is how you manage those emotions, those feelings, how you manage the potential workload that could come as a result of that preparation. But then saying to staff, but you do it every day. It's part and parcel of what you do every day. So it shouldn't actually make any difference at all. But I think the negative comes where people are second guessing themselves. You see people having self-doubt in terms of what they're doing, in how they might communicate that, how they will potentially perform under pressure in that scenario. The sense that people feel that they need to have all the answers, and actually, why would you be expected to have all the answers? None of us have all the answers.
Yes.
But we did some work in preparation around that. So those who were subject leaders, we used the support from the local authority and also from our partnership of schools, where we have different people coming into the school to support on school improvement. Just allowed subject leaders to go through mock deep dives, but to enable subject leaders to ask the questions that might be asked, allow subject leaders to lead the consultant around school and to be able to have those professional conversations. So you have it in a safe and secure environment, so the person can then see, this is what it might be like, these are the things that I know and know well, these are the things I need to go away and work on, and then allow them the time to go away and then do that, and then provide them with the necessary support, so that they're ready as much as they can be for that conversation when you get the phone call.
Yeah. So it sounds like a big part of what you're doing is trying to build up and create a sense of confidence and perspective around it,
Yeah.
and remind your staff they're the experts, Ofsted are the guests, and
Yes.
trying to sort of buoy them in that way. I'm wondering, what else do you think? Oh, I think we might be getting a little bit of echo of my voice.
That might be me as well. I'm in a little bit of an echoey room as well.
No worries, okay. The question then is around the role of leaders in this. You know, you've already talked about helping people manage emotions, add perspective, build confidence. What else do you see as the role of the leader in this process of inspections in terms of sort of protecting the community throughout this process?
I think it's really important through the process as leaders that we are as transparent as we can be in terms of being honest with staff that this may involve some work, because actually we are preparing for an inspection, being clear with staff as leaders that this is what the expectations look like, and actually we're gonna do some work with you to support you through that process, so that you're not left so you're not left floundering. But I think it's also, as leaders, it's having that open door policy so that staff can come at any point. Staff can come at any point and have a conversation about how they're possibly feeling about the upcoming inspection, but also being honest with staff and saying that actually you too might have concerns about aspects of it, but what you're doing to manage those concerns, because I think it is important that staff don't see this whole thing of, oh, you're a leader and you don't seem at all worried by the inspection coming through, that you think everything is going to be fine and hunky-dory, and then the staff's going away thinking, so why am I worried about it if you're not? But actually, as a leader, if you're saying, well, actually, I am worried about, when they come, what they might say, what they might see. We can see that this particular aspect of school life isn't in the utopia style that we would like it to be in, but actually, we're working on that. So staff begin to see that you are having similar thoughts to them, but then talking through with staff, but actually we're dealing with the reality. We don't know what's going to happen on that day. We don't know what child A is going to do in response to there being people in suits walking around the building, but we'll deal with that when it comes. And I think it's that open and honest conversation with staff when they come, seeking a bit of support, a bit of clarification. Staff fully appreciate that myself running between two schools, my time, my time is limited. But I know when they come, they're clearly coming for a valid reason, and they're coming to talk about something, particularly when we have on the run up to the inspection, when I could see that schools around us who were done at the same time were being inspected. And I would just sometimes say to staff, oh, just to let you know, so-and-so schools had the call, so I'm expecting that we're going to be at some point. When the inspection structure was halted at the start of this calendar year, in January, I just said to staff, well, I think we're probably due to be in those 2-3 weeks, but everything was halted because of this, this, and this. So just need to make sure that we stay alert, stay on top of things, and work together. And I think it's having that honesty with staff.
Yes. And it
Instead of
sounds like,
thinking, no,
oh,
go
sorry,
on.
it sounds like you're trying to blend that perspective giving that you mentioned earlier with some of your sort of authenticity and vulnerability as a leader by saying, I do have concerns as well, but
Yeah.
we can get through this and this is what's expected. So the balance between leading and leading authentically.
Yes, I think it's important to get the balance, because I think where I've seen in my leadership, when I've been very open and transparent with staff, and staff do know that there are certain things that I'm not going to be able to disclose with them, but they know when I can disclose key information that I know is going to keep them in the loop of what's going on. They have appreciated that,
That's good.
and I think it is. I think it is around. I always see them as they are my, the staff are my class of children. Granted, you don't normally have more than 30 in your class, and I've got two very large staff communities across both schools. But I will say to them, you are my class, and I would think to myself, what would I have done when I was in class? How would I have responded to a child who was upset, to a child who was overjoyed, to a child who was anxious? Why should my response be any different to an adult than it would be to a child? If a child is demonstrating some concern over something, yes, an adult you would think potentially might be able to manage that slightly better, but actually it's still an emotion. You still have to support them in managing that emotion as a senior leader. But
Yeah.
you then also got to make sure yourself that you've got someone that you can talk to offload what staff are often talking about
Yeah.
yourself. Because then otherwise you could be carrying it all, and sponges can only absorb so much,
Yeah.
but you've then got to have your own outlets as a senior leader to be able to talk through some of the issues that might have arisen in conversations that you've had with staff,
Yeah.
so that you're best placed to continue supporting them and supporting them effectively.
Am I right in thinking that you did our supervision program? So I'm hoping that was
Yes,
helpful in that.
yes, I am. Yes, but I'm in the middle of doing a supervision program at the moment, and that for me, that for me has been fantastic, because I think where there is the danger, sometimes you just keep running with things, and you don't necessarily give yourself enough time to stop and pause, and to reflect upon what may have happened. What that does, the supervision sessions, it just allows you time to reflect, and it allows you time to really focus on what the pertinent things are, because it
I
is
love
quite
that.
easy. It is quite easy as a senior leader to almost get swept up with everything that's going on, and it's important. The supervision sessions have given me the opportunity to sort of refocus my thinking and to reset some of my thinking, particularly knowing that now I've had one school go through the inspection process. The other school is due quite soon.
Ah,
So the supervision falling in the middle has really given me the opportunity to think, what went well and why, and what would I do differently but why would I, but why would I do it differently?
I'm so glad that that has been helpful during that process. And I think just thinking back then to your second group of staff in your second school who are awaiting it, if you're thinking about your ECTs, your classroom teachers, maybe the ones who are going through it for the first time, you know, what, how would you help them stay well? What would you advise they do to kind of protect their mental health during that stressful time?
Um, I'd say to them it's important to come and have a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily need to be a senior staff member,
Mm-hmm.
but it's important you go and talk to someone. So
Yeah.
all of our ECTs and anyone new to the school, we buddy up with a more experienced staff member, so they know that they've got that person that they can go and have a conversation with. Staff are also very aware that as senior leaders, we have an open door policy. So they can come and have those conversations so that you get a sense of how people are feeling at whatever level within the school, at whatever time in the school. So you're in the best position to be able to respond to that. So you're in a better position of being proactive rather than reactive to what is going on with staff. The other thing I say to staff, and I said this to staff at the school where we've just had the inspection, just keep up with the different things that you need to do. And if you're finding you're not managing that, come and have a conversation. Don't wait for the phone call to come from Ofsted, and then suddenly you're up until 2, 3 in the morning thinking that everything needs to be all singing or dancing for 2 days, because actually you won't get through the 2 days. It's about, for me, looking at what the day-to-day looks like, and if you're delivering quality opportunities for learning on a day-to-day basis. Yes, when Ofsted come, you're going to feel a bit nervous about it, but they'll be able to see through talking to the children. They'll be able to see through the evidence of your books that actually, on a day-to-day basis, the diet of what those children are getting is good. You may not be used to having people in your room, particularly in inspectors, but actually we're in a position to be able to have conversations with inspectors in terms of this is where various people are on their educational professional journey, so please take X, Y, and Z into account when you're going in. And also the fact that the inspectors are accompanied by a senior staff member or the staff member who is conducting that particular deep dive. I think that also helps to reassure, because we make it clear to staff that the member of staff coming in will be able to point out the good practice, will be able to manage that narrative with the inspector. And I saw that happen a lot through the last inspection I've just had, where actually with those staff who didn't feel as comfortable or as confident because it was their first time, they knew that senior staff were there to support them. They knew we were there to listen. We knew that they knew that they could come if they needed to come, but we also checked in with them, the day of the inspection. These are things that leaders would do anyway. Just take a quick walk around, make sure everyone's okay, and then just pop up during the course of the day. Because as a head, you're pretty much left alone unless you're keeping in touch meetings. That gives you the chance to get out and about in your school and just check in with everyone, see if everyone is okay. So they know that you're there. They know that you're about. The children know that you're about, and that helps. I think that just helps to calm people's nerves.
It sounds like what you're saying is that actually connection and connecting with each other is one of the most important things for staying well and resilient during stressful points, whether they're inspection led or whatever in a school.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think if you set up an environment where people know that you're there to support them, you're there to have professional conversations, you're there to, you know, if you need to have that awkward or difficult conversation, that people know that conversation, you know, will be had, but will be had as sensitively as it can be. When it then comes to those big moments of when you've got key people visiting the school, they do feel more ready for that because they know that there's a culture of communication, there's a culture of transparency, there's a culture of support. It just so happened that in the spring term, and this was partly due to timetabling, we had the local authority in for an afternoon. We had an independent consultant in for another afternoon, and we are also a part of a peer review group. So they were in for a day, and they must have happened. It was in about a 3-week window. There was something each week. So staff got to the point and said, "Oh my goodness me, this is just too much going on." And I thought, in some ways, it's almost preparing you for what is to come when we have an inspection, because it got to the stage by the time the third person came in, people had what they needed. It was there at people's fingertips. People were able to have those conversations. So when the call came, there's that moment of flurry, and it was quite amusing because I was observing a lesson that morning, and the room that I was in, the phone was ringing, and so it must have been about 20 to 10 on the Wednesday morning. The phone was ringing, and I don't tend to answer the phone, and I don't encourage the person who is being observed to answer the phone either. So the phone was ringing, and I was with the deputy, and we just looked at each other, and I just carried on what I was doing, and it then stopped ringing, and then you could suddenly hear down the corridor this complete movement of what is going on.
Hustle and bustle.
And then a knock on the door. There's a phone call for you, Mr. Walker. It's Ofsted, and the person relaying the information was trying to be as really calm as possible. And I said, "Okay, I'll be there in a moment." I just stood up, gathered my paperwork, deep breath, deep breath, deep breath, deep breath. But I need to remain calm because actually I've got people in the room.
Yeah.
Quietly walked down the corridor, got into my room. Finally, the calls arrived. You gather your thoughts and then you carry on again. Because I thought it was really important for staff not to see me panicking.
Yeah. Because it trickles
Because I
down.
thought it trickles down really quickly. Because
Yeah.
the admin team, the admin team were panicking.
Yeah.
So, and I thought, I don't need to panic.
Yeah.
Because if I panic, they're going to panic. And I can guarantee that I'll get around the building within a matter of
Immediately.
seconds.
Yeah. And that's where that balance between your leadership responsibilities and how you hold your authenticity, you know, need to be considered, because being authentic is so right in some contexts, but in other contexts, it's so right to just, as a leader, swallow down that panic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was quite weird because I think staff, you know, I sort of said to staff, you know, you need to be gone by said time on the first night, and there's no reason for you to be here beyond that. I said, because actually I need to go home. And I'm not going to be here until 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Because actually I'm not going to be mentally prepared to mentally support you guys through the inspection, as well as trying to mentally get myself through that 2-day process. So
Such an important message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I sort of think, you know, if you're here, and I do remember doing that in one inspection, and that must have been about 2010, where we were at school really late the first night, and it then meant that the first day of the inspection, you were almost running on autopilot because you then hadn't really slept or you hadn't had time to switch off. And I thought, as a head, I thought I'm not getting into that.
Yeah.
I don't. I'll take it home with me, but staff need to see that actually school is closing at this time because we all need a change of scenery. We all need a break.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just that practical understanding, isn't it? That if everybody is that exhausted, no one does their best work. There's sort of
no.
there's a very operational reality to that.
Yeah, there is very much, and I think if you have that notion very clear with staff, that I sort of said to staff, if you're trying to backtrack a mark on the night before the inspection, that's just a complete waste of time, because the children will open that book the next day and say, "Oh look, it's been marked." Those kids are going to show you up. So I said, so there's no point in doing that.
Oh, that's
If,
funny.
yeah, if you're studying or singing or dancing on the 2 days of inspection, the kids will turn around and say, "Hang
Yeah.
on a minute, that's not normally you," and they will say that while the inspector's in the room. So I said, so don't set yourself up for a fall.
Yes, that's a great piece of advice. Just that little bits of consistency.
Yeah.
We're running out of time, so I'm going to get you to end with your top tips for staying
Okay.
well.
Okay.
Go on.
So my top tips, I've got two. When you can, be transparent with staff about the process, and particularly about how you're feeling about the process, so they can see that you yourself have concerns and that you are happy to talk about those concerns. And I think my other top tip is to know when to stop. You can spend hours preparing things, thinking that all the I's need to be dotted and all the T's need to be crossed. And then actually they come in on the day and they ask you for something that actually you haven't got neatly prepared in a folder, which you spent the last 6 weeks making sure that that it's all neatly labelled and all in the correct place. Because actually they come in, they ask you for something, you've got time to go and get it. And what was quite noticeable this time was the expression from Ofsted, "if it's no trouble," or "if it doesn't cause you any additional work." I'm thinking, of course it's going to cause me additional work. You're in my building. It's
That is
so
the one.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a bit of an oxymoron. Of course it's going to cause, of course
Yes.
it's additional work. But I think it's about being transparent,
Yeah.
and it's just about knowing for yourself as a leader when to stop, and then modelling that to your staff.
So they know when to stop as well. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Amazing. And of course, I loved what you said about connection and communication as well. And I would just say to anybody listening that if they're wondering where they might get that from, our helpline is there. The phone number is on our link in bio, and you'll speak to a qualified counsellor. So please don't hesitate to pick up the phone. But otherwise, thank you, Lee.
You're
It's
most
been
welcome.
brilliant talking to you. You've got loads of experience with inspections. So it's been great to hear what it's been like for you.
Thanks, Gemma. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you
Take care.
so much.
No problems. Bye bye.
Bye.